Western actors who were everywhere, then disappeared. He wasn't a star, but if you watched Western television in the 1950s or 60s, you saw him constantly. In saloons, in gunfights, riding through frontier towns. He appeared for a few minutes in one story, then vanished into another. No fame, no spotlight, no recognition, just face after face after face. And then he disappeared completely. But he wasn't alone.
You think this is enough to see that we're not disturbed?
Oh, brother Homer.
What do I have to do to get the $500?
Aside from your interest, $20 against the turkey, that I will shoot 500.
The invisible system of Western TV. Western television didn't run on stars alone. It ran on a massive rotation system of character actors, men who moved from show to show, episode to episode, town to town. One week, they were a sheriff in Gunsmoke. The next week, a ranch hand in Bonanza. Then an outlaw in Wagon Train. Then gone again. It wasn't unusual. It was the structure of the entire genre. These actors were not background noise. They were essential. Without them, the Western world would have felt empty, because every town needed citizens. Every saloon needed voices. Every gunfight needed someone to stand on either side of it. And because television westerns produced hundreds of episodes a year, these actors worked constantly. But the trade-off was simple. The more they appeared, the less they were remembered. Gene Evans wasn't a Western star in the way audiences usually remembered them. He didn't headline major films, and his name rarely appeared at the top of billings. But throughout the 1950s and into the 1960s, he became one of the most consistent and reliable faces in Western television. At a time when networks were producing dozens of Western episodes every single week, actors like Evans were essential to keeping the system running. He represented a type of performer that Hollywood depended on heavily, especially during the peak years of the genre. These were actors who could step into almost any role and make it feel believable. They weren't there to stand out. They were there to make the world feel real. Evans had already built a reputation for playing tough, grounded characters in earlier films, including his role in The Steel Helmet, where he portrayed a soldier under extreme pressure.
And you ballerinas smoke cigars?
I got a box in my pack.
Oh, yeah? What kind?
I don't know. I don't smoke. I just found them.
I'll see you as far as the temple for the stogies. Know where it is? Let's go.
That same sense of realism carried directly into his Western work. When he appeared in series like Gunsmoke,
He stuck his finger in the end of your what?
Would you shut up? Everybody.
Rawhide,
I don't really understand what happened, Paul. You said you had your gun on him, and I ain't.
and Wagon Train, he brought a presence that felt lived in. He didn't feel like an actor performing a role. He felt like someone who had existed in that world long before the camera arrived. In Gunsmoke, you could find him playing men caught in difficult situations, often dealing with moral decisions that didn't have clear answers. In Rawhide, his appearance blended into the harsh environment of the cattle drives, where survival and endurance mattered more than heroics. And in Wagon Train, he became part of the rotating structure that defined the show, appearing in stories that focused on different characters each week. But this type of career came with a limitation. The more an actor appeared across different shows, the less likely audiences were to associate them with a single identity. They became familiar, but not memorable, recognizable, but not famous. And when Western television began to lose its dominance in the late 1960s, that system started to break down. Fewer shows meant fewer roles. Fewer roles meant fewer opportunities for actors like Evans to appear consistently. The transition wasn't immediate. It didn't happen overnight. Instead, it happened gradually. One less appearance here, a longer gap between roles there, until eventually the work that had once been constant simply stopped. And when that happened, actors like Gene Evans didn't just leave the spotlight, they disappeared from the system entirely. The lost ecosystem of character actors. There were dozens of actors just like him. Some appeared in over 100 episodes across different shows, without even becoming recognizable by name. They played the men who arrived after the gunfight, the men who started trouble, or the men who tried to stop it too late. They were in Gunsmoke,
Defend him while he tried to prove your innocence.
I was just getting supplies. Pa wanted me to tell you he was
Bonanza.
sorry he couldn't make that poker game last night. We were kind of busy.
Well, I imagine the fire
The Virginian.
did it do much damage to the house?
Nah, we managed to get it put out pretty quick.
How in tarnation
The
did
Rifleman.
House manage to set that house afire in the middle of the night?
Well, I'll tell you, Roy, here's what
Have
we
gun,
figure. He was
will
downstairs
travel.
frying some catfish and grains, and
Wagon Train. Week after week, story after story. They kept the Western world alive. But this ecosystem had a limit. It depended on volume. And when Western television stopped dominating prime time, the entire system collapsed.
This is Mr. Favor. He's the trail boss.
Carey Jr. wasn't just another Western actor working through television in the 1950s and 60s. He was part of something older, something that existed before television Westerns took over, before that weekly cycle of rotating characters and fast production schedules. He was part of the original Hollywood Western tradition. Unlike many of the actors who moved between shows like Gunsmoke, Bonanza, and Wagon Train, Carey's career was tied to a much earlier era of filmmaking, an era defined by directors like John Ford and stars like John Wayne. These weren't just westerns made for television. These were films that shaped how audiences understood the American frontier. And Carey Jr. was there, working inside that system from the inside out. He appeared in films like The Searchers, a film that didn't just tell a Western story, but helped define the tone and landscape and the emotional weight of the genre itself. In that world, characters weren't just passing through towns for a single episode. They were part of something larger, something more permanent. He also appeared in She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, where the Western wasn't just about conflict, but about aging, duty, and the passing of time. These films moved slower, they carried weight, and the actors within them weren't interchangeable. They were part of a consistent world. And in Three Godfathers, Carey became part of a story that blended Western themes with something more reflective, a journey through the desert that focused less on action and more on endurance, survival, and moral responsibility. What made Carey different from many of the television actors who came later was that he wasn't just filling roles, he was part of a cinematic identity, a version of the West that audiences believed in. But even that kind of foundation couldn't last forever. As the 1950s moved into the 1960s and television began to dominate Western storytelling, the industry started to shift. Studios moved faster, stories became shorter, characters became more interchangeable. Actors like Carey didn't disappear immediately. They transitioned, they adapted, they appeared in television, they continued working. But the world around them had changed. The Western was no longer something built slowly over time. It became something produced weekly, repeated, recycled, reformatted. And in that system, even actors with deep roots in the genre became less central. Carey's career didn't vanish in the same abrupt way as many character actors, but something else happened instead. He became a link to a past version of the genre, a version that was slowly being replaced. And as Westerns themselves began to fade from mainstream dominance in the 1970s, even that connection became less visible.
Repeat what you said. I'd like to be remembered.
Why they disappeared. Western television didn't collapse suddenly. It faded. slowly at first, then completely. Audiences changed, networks changed, Hollywood changed. Crime dramas replaced frontier justice. Urban stories replaced frontier towns. Modern settings replaced dusty streets. And with that shift, the demand for these actors disappeared. Not because they failed, but because their world no longer existed in the same form. But if you look closely, their performances are still there, inside hundreds of episodes, across dozens of films, preserved in time. Most of these actors were never meant to be famous, but they were essential. They built the world that made westerns believable. And when the genre faded, they faded with it. Not erased, just left behind by time.
The channel for westerns and more.
If you enjoyed this video, turn on notifications so you don't miss my next one. Check out my channel and Facebook page. Links are in the description below. If you got value from this, please comment, like, share and subscribe. It really helps. I appreciate it. I'm Wrangler. Bye for now. See you again soon.